Hey there, folks, and welcome back to the Sporia Campaign. Last time, we formed the nation of Slavia. With this came a name change, a country color change, and a flag change. We also saw the implementation of a very good country modifier, National Spirit, as well as a local modifier in the Bialystok territory, center of civilization. Not too useful in Bialystok in this campaign, but it is nice to have. We also got some additional pops added to Bialystok, where things are getting a little crowded. I can move these 12 slaves elsewhere, and I do have other places I can certainly move them to. I've got plenty of empty infrastructure ready for workers, but we will come back to that. Now, in the previous episode, we also initiated a massive top-to-bottom reorganization of the country to coincide with our transformation at last into Slavia. Starting at the top with a government reorganization, we hired a full new set of characters, most of whom are younger and have a lot of room to grow, build up some statesmanship, and really preparing for the next kind of generation of officers here. Also ensuring that they all have good loyalty and no corruption problems, as I've been burned before by not paying enough attention to that. We also replaced all of our researchers, ensuring everyone has got the proper traits to try to get me more of those events. And notably, we replaced all of our governors with a new, largely younger set of relatively loyal and relatively non-corrupt characters. I mean, within reason, this is Imperator Rome after all. So overall, things are looking quite good on that front. We do have quite a bit of governor policy micromanagement we have to do because, of course, many of these governors chose the wrong policies for what my goals are with much of my land, but we will come back to that as we get the PI to deal with it. We also are preparing gradually for the inevitable succession from Tribal Chief Rasa. She is technically in poor health, but she's been in poor health for the full time we've had her. She doesn't actually have any illnesses, which is why her stats remain pretty good at 66. 8686 is quite solid for where things are for her. And is she doing a focus right now? Yeah, isn't she on a focus? Hold on. Where's my... Here it is, Commerce Focus. Okay, I was just thinking, did it reset for some reason? Sometimes when you do a tag change, or you do a formable, some weird stuff like that can happen, but we seem to be fine. Either way, the point is that Rasa, despite being in poor health, I think we should have another 10 to 15 years of her, hopefully closer to 20. I do like her quite a bit with her stats. As for her successors, things are a bit more all over the place. The current leading successor is Gantautis, who at 42712 would at least provide us some good tyranny loss and stability recovery, but that's pretty much it. And his sort of rival for the position, possibly his actual rival, is again Bartis. All the chiefs seem to rival each other all the time. 4784 is a bit better balanced, though he is worse than Rasa. The other two, Gnoris and Skurgurtus, are okay at best. All of these guys are older than Rasa, and many of them actually have health problems already, so I kind of expect that this will be similar to how Rasa succeeded her predecessor, with all of the most expected successors dying off before the succession happens, and a relatively unknown newcomer to the chief's table ending up being the one to just have the most support when the succession happens after all the other long-standing chiefs have died. This seems to be the way chiefdom successions largely work in Imperator Rome long-term. Now, having said all that, it's time to talk about provincial capitals, because I have made a pretty substantial change to my copy of Terra Indomita for the sake of the campaign. And that change has to do with the rules of changing provincial capitals. Now, let me select a location like Lugia, which is a good example here, because Lugia is currently disloyal. However, I can now change the provincial capital location even though it's disloyal. There's actually something I don't talk about too often, but a rule with changing provincial capital is that it actually requires 50 current loyalty normally to do, even though it costs 30 loyalty, so you wouldn't really want to do it if you're like below 63 really. But nonetheless, with a province that's currently disloyal like Lugia, I can now do it, and it costs 0 loyalty. That is the change I've made. I've removed the 50 loyalty requirements to do it, and I've removed the 30 loyalty cost to do it. Now, it says increases loyalty by 0. It counts 0 as a positive number. Obviously, 0 isn't actually a positive or negative number in the context of this effect on the province. Whether it is sort of mathematically is a more complicated question, I guess, for you mathematicians out there. But in terms of what this does, it does nothing. It is 0 direction change of loyalty either direction. And I can do it for any single province, no matter its loyalty or disloyalty, no matter what its current loyalty, which means I can now, for the first time in the campaign, actually sit down and destroy the pacing of the campaign beyond what I've done already, and just literally spend probably multiple episodes meticulously relocating every single capital without unpausing, all at the same time, with the exception, I guess, of within Sporia, I still have to spend political influence and have other things to move the actual capital. I'm not moving the national capital from Bialystok. So in effect, I can move all of my capitals at the same time, which I want to do because the time has come for the ultimate, conclusive, final decision on how I'm going to be handling provincial capitals in this campaign. This campaign has seen the most chaos and shifting perspectives from me on provincial capitals as I've grappled with the weird way this campaign works and the unusual focus in this campaign on tribesmen, which is not normally a pop type I've particularly focused on before. Even in previous like migratory tribe or kind of tribal campaigns, many of my campaigns have actually started as tribe campaigns and would become kingdoms, such as the original Akenia campaign. I think both of my Carpetania campaigns, obviously they went different directions ultimately, but in terms of what they became. And some other campaigns I've done have also started as tribes. The only campaign that I intended to be a tribe for quite a long time was the Zhongnu campaign, which was in many ways the most similar to this campaign, but that one long term I planned to become an empire. But this campaign, I've purposely been playing it in a way where I intend to remain a migratory tribe with these crazy modifiers and just work around the limitations of not having cities, of not having all the other stuff that would come with not being a migratory tribe. And so all of that said, over the course of this campaign, my philosophy on where provincial capitals should be has changed quite a bit. So let me take a moment to quickly talk about the history of my provincial capital philosophizing as I've reached the point now of how I want to handle locating these capitals. Now, before this campaign, my approach was provincial capitals should be cities that are fortified, and I was guided then in my choices by what's a good city location and what's a good fort location. Many of these things have many variables. In this campaign, initially, I pointed out, because I'm not going to have cities, I just need to place the capitals in fort locations. I basically took my previous approach, and because I removed one half of the equation, I was left with the other half of the equation, fort locations. However, over time, I realized that just having fort location be the thinking for the provincial capital location makes me miss out quite a bit on a lot of other potential from the provincial capital. The capital is where nearby captured slaves are sent. It's also a place with a lot of migration attraction. And very critically for this campaign, where I'm in this kind of more northerly, largely kind of rugged terrain area of the world, being the provincial capital gives a territory 6 additional base pop capacity, which is a lot of pop capacity in these areas of the game. A lot of these places only have around 10 capacity by default, so this is a huge effect from being the provincial capital. And so, a few episodes ago, I decided to implement a massive project of defortification, which I largely stand by. I think it's the right direction for this campaign, with some exceptions of places where fortifications remain smart, and I think those are obvious. Basically, south of the Carpathian Mountains, along the Scythian border, and around the Alanian border. But basically everywhere else, I feel pretty confident keeping these places unfortified for now. Of course, we'll always be open to revisiting it, and it's not like I can't fortify it later, but that's been my thinking. And with the defortification push, I decided to start shifting around the capitals with a new goal of essentially recreating, as it were, the original formula of city location, fort location, now without thinking about fort location, but also thinking, okay, instead of it being a city, it's going to be a tribal settlement, which acts sort of like a city, and I can just stuff it with tribesmen. So this new tribesman city style approach, which is very tailored for this particular campaign, has proven to be super, super good. This is giving me a much, much stronger tax economy, and my tax economy continues to grow very steadily. It tends to grow very steadily, but the tribesmen are definitely producing a larger and larger amount of tax as I bring them together, give them these output bonuses. And notably, my manpower has just completely exploded. I'm seeing huge amounts of additional manpower, the likes of which I was not expecting at all. And it really is coming from being able to concentrate the tribesmen, giving them these bonuses on a territory by territory level, as previously they've just been kind of scattered all over the place, providing little bits of manpower here and there. Once they are brought together and they're given these bonuses, it really, really shows on the manpower front. Now, with all that said, what is my approach from here on out? Because I've kind of articulated the history of how I've approached provincial capital locations, what I focused on. Well, to start off, I'm essentially, like with previous changes in my philosophy, taking my most recent previous philosophy and evolving it based on my new thinking and my new approach to min-maxing. I continue to believe in defortification for this campaign, again, with the exceptions that I've, I think, made clear, and case by case, I'll always be open to fortifying when I need to, but I largely don't think anyone bordering me, except for like the Lysimachids, maybe the Antipatrids, eventually the Romans, and the Scythians, Alanians. Now, I will say, with that note, when the Romans are conquering further into the Balkans, that's where fortifying this area starts to make more sense. And of course, if I actually conquer Dacia, which is a short-term intent of mine, not necessarily something I'm going to do right away, but I am working on it now. Once I get into Dacia, then I'm getting closer and closer to the Roman territories. I certainly will start to fortify once I have some of this defensive terrain worked out over here, but we'll come back to that later. So, not thinking about fortification, not thinking about fort coverage. What am I thinking about? Well, like my previous approach, I'm looking to create tribal outposts, essentially like crowded settlements that are like a city, but just 100% focused on tribesmen. Now, something interesting I've started to realize about tribal settlements is that unlike most territories that are just, settlement level territories, they have tribesman, slave, and a little bit of citizen default ratio. This is true across terrain type. Of course, the ones that have other infrastructure, it changes things, but you get the idea. So, what's interesting about the tribal settlements? Well, the citizen desired ratio that it's reducing it by, even though it says 2.5%, it actually reduces it to 0%. And I think this is because of the way ratio works. It's very confusing to kind of articulate in terms of the way the math interacts with the other math. This is something I've encountered in working on my mod hegemony. But essentially, the way the ratio works is it's not always just what it says on the surface of it, because ratio interacts with the other ratios to always equal 100. And so the way it actually works out is that reducing the citizen ratio by 2.50% counters the innate amount given by the settlement terrain rank, which results in 0%. So all of my tribal settlement territories only have ratio for tribesmen and slaves. And while they're tribesmen, they're of course giving me tax and manpower. As they become slaves, they give me tax still. They don't give me manpower anymore, but what they are giving me are themselves slave pops that are going to largely be werasporic, which I can move around to fuel my commerce economy. So I've actually realized that tribal settlements give me a way to scourge my nation of unnecessary extra, citizens, nobles, freemen, especially citizens in these settlements where they may be growing on their own. And I can stuff them with tribesmen, the easiest pop type for me to get because they could just come directly from migrators. And then the tribesmen gradually become slaves, which I can then move later to fuel my territories that have commerce buildings, which means sticking with the tribal settlement building over other alternatives is, I think, ultimately the correct route for places I intend to stuff with non-slaves. Generally, that's going to be tribesmen. Obviously, there are certain territories that I should stuff with slaves, and that's where we come to the approach I'll be taking from here on out, which is to approach each province very purely from an internal provincial point of view. I'm no longer going to put any thought at all into the location of the capitals in relation to other capitals. I'm only looking at the literal territories of the province and evaluating, in this province, this is a closed system with a certain number of territories that are preset, which territory is the best place to set up as the tribal settlement territory. That's the main question. Because many provinces have tons of territories that aren't necessarily best used as the tribal settlement territory. For example, in Rugia, the capital has been Vistjuliana. And by the way, I actually had a recording snafu earlier, so I destroyed the sanctuary here. But the reason I did that is because I was saying in the previous recording attempt that, and I say recording snafu, my technical problem, but what I basically want to say about Vistjuliana is that I'm going to actually be removing the Grove of Vilkos and moving it somewhere else. Because the Grove of Vilkos, while it provides a tax bonus, also indirectly provides a pop capacity bonus through the sanctuary, which also provides a tax bonus. This combination is best used because I only have a tiny number of possible Wayra sanctuaries I can place. In some other location, it's not best used here. Vistjuliana should actually be a slave estate, as should Rugia, as should Ugum, because these territories as amber territories would be providing an extremely valuable and really rare resource that I really need to maximize because I control this area of the world that actually does have quite a bit of amber. Now, aside from that, there's obviously territories where a trade good building can be located. So, for example, food resources and mineral resources, and in particular these resources because the building I can construct provides an extra copy, which means extra slaves does mean another extra copy, but the building itself provides its own extra copy. Notably, other resource buildings like the hunting camp and the logging camp don't provide the extra copy, they just provide the slave bonus. And the hunting camp also sort of muddies the water with tribesman bonuses. Really, I should be specializing each province to be, or I should say each territory to be either tribesmen or slaves. I shouldn't go for this mixed combination approach. It just doesn't really work out because those tribesmen are better suited in a crowded tribal settlement territory. So with all of that said, because I'm not thinking about fort coverage, I'm not thinking about, it's hard for me not to because I have OCD, but I'm not thinking about the way it visually looks to have territories in different nearby provinces be in awkwardly close spots to each other. Where is the best province based on this new calculus in Rugia is actually Campia. And that's because it's essentially process of elimination. Ugum, Rugia, and Vistjuliana should all be slave estates. Skiria Rugia should be a farm for the extra copy of livestock. Viadris should be a farm. Rugium should be a farm. These two are the remaining. So again, process of elimination, because number one priority, special resources like gold or amber, and that's only occasionally true. But so usually number one priority after that, in that case, number two priority, is commerce building locations. Number three priority is the best location of the remaining territories to be the tribal settlement. So then we're left with Campia and Lemoviana, which ironically was the first capital I picked because it was a good fort location. However, now we're looking, okay, these are both hemp. Hemp is not a super valuable resource, and I'm going to even check case by case, 0.25, that's not worth having a slave estate for. I could have a slave estate in Lemoviana because it's not going to be the capital, but Campia as a plain has better pop capacity because that's then the metric to keep in mind, is pop capacity when everything else is the same. So we're going to go ahead and move the capital to Campia. Let's go ahead and do that there. And then I will, once I have my levy ready, actually get rid of the Grove of Vilkos. I'll move it somewhere else later. I don't need to keep, I guess I can keep it there for now, but this will actually be a slave estate, as will Rugia, as will Ugum. And I'm actually going to go ahead now because I'm thinking about it. Let me go find my capital. Let me move those slaves all the way over here. I'm also going to move these tribesmen over to Campia from Vistjuliana. All right, let me find them. Vistjuliana, where are they in my list? Here they are, okay. Let's move these guys over. And then at Campia, I'm going to build a tribal settlement. Now, I'm blowing through a lot of my money right now to build the infrastructure here. I'm still going to move the capitals in the rest of the country, but I only have so much money. I want to start as usual in Venetia and kind of work my way out from there, but I will move all the capitals before I unpause and continue the game, as that doesn't cost anything. The infrastructure may have to wait ultimately, but I'm doing it here because I have spent the most time thinking through Rugia as a kind of example of this approach. And by the way, I hope you appreciate, or at least don't mind, the extreme detail of this episode. This is probably my most in-depth and kind of strategic episode in terms of the economic grand strategy of this campaign, but I've seen how much my min-maxing has really supercharged the potential of this campaign so far, and I really like going this deep when I can. Now, I'm actually going to go ahead and build, I'm just going to fully commit to infrastructure up here, build farming settlements over here too, even though I don't plan to move slaves here immediately. The extra copy is ultimately going to be worth this money and will pay for itself over time. So let's go ahead now and head back over to Bialystok. Let's just move all these slaves over. So first, let's see, what's the best route to get over here? Probably through here. Yeah. Okay, so move them to Munki. Move slaves from Bialystok. Let's move all of them. Okay, Bialystok is now actually almost within its own pop capacity. Move them to Wyzierski from Munki. Let's move all the non-Weresporks first. Although Wyzierski is a actually this isn't currently a farm. I guess I could leave some slaves here. I'll move them over first. I'll worry about that later. Although Munki actually is a logging camp. What do I need 9 here, so let me take the rest as Werespork from Munki. I'll leave 10 there just to be safe. Okay. Move him over here from Wyzierski. I'll just move all of them from Wyzierski, except for making sure they're still with the Iceland too. Alright. And then into here from Mamre. What does Mamre have? Mamre actually, yeah, Mamre has a ton of Weresporks. Okay, I leave the tribesmen. Okay. Alright. And then move them over here to, let's see, Venetia from Sudenoia Borealis. Okay, good. I can leave the tribesmen there. Alright. You can see why I like to use migrations instead of using move pops. It's expensive, but I have a lot of money in my economy for this exact purpose. Alright. Move over into Maron from Venetia. Or wait, no, where did I move them to? Yeah, I moved them to Venetia. That's right. This place just doesn't have any infrastructure right now. All right, into Maron from Venetia. We'll leave behind 1 Werespork. Okay. And then into Venedica from Maron. Alright, and then this place also doesn't have any. We can just leave that guy there. Alright. And I'll actually bring I'll leave the slave there, that's fine. Alright, and then over the river from Venedica into Vistuliana. Okay. Now, let's redistribute these guys. So we want the slaves. We actually have another copy of Amber just from this, but we're not going to maintain this, obviously. So we're going to go ahead and send over into these places here. So first let's get these tribesmen out of the way. So from Vistuliana, send over 1 of these guys. Same thing over here. And then into Compia, I can send all the tribesmen, all the extra tribesmen. And the tribesmen I send to Compia can also be non-Weyraspork, because in Compia they'll be always a minority compared to the Weyraspork tribesmen. So, let's see, Rugium, I can send one over. All right, Yugam and Rugia. You know, while I'm at it, let's send over the extra Ristiliana. That's fine. Okay, that's all fine then. All right, and then let's see, into Rugia from Vistiliana, let's send over like 14 slaves. So we'll send over or I mean 15 slaves, not 14. And then, in Yugam, let's send over the remainder that we can from Vistiliana. There we go. That's the most we can do for now. And then, do we have any extra slaves we can send over to Yugam as well? Compia doesn't have any extra slaves, so not really, but that's okay. We'll bring more slaves over eventually. Okay, so that's an example of one province being maximally updated with infrastructure. So, I guess while I'm thinking about it, let me find some more slaves to send over. So, what do we still need? We still need to get 11 slaves for Yugam. Alright, let's see, who else can we send over? That's pretty much it. So then from Carinia into Compia, all these guys can go to Yugam from Compia. Alright, good. Okay, I need more slaves down here. I can go through Carinia, that's perfect. I think so. Let's see. Not really too many. Oh, shoot, okay, I have to fix that. Okay, these guys here, though, can move through Carinia. Beguntiana. Into Compia. And then into Yugam from Compia. There we go. Now we've got 2 extra copies of Amber that we can sell that will ultimately improve our economy quite a bit. Okay, and so with Rugia now fully updated, let's start moving the capitals around using the same thinking. So in Helveconia, also let me just quickly check, what should Rugia's policy be? I think this is probably the most it can do at the moment. Okay, in Helveconia it can maintain Bleed Them Dry. Let's see. I think Carinia should remain the capital location. Let's check through our sort of options here. So that's a location that could work. It is on, so it's in a forest, but it's on a major river and it's on a minor river. So it's basically the equivalent of a plains with a river, despite being a forest. It's a little weird. This place here would also technically work in a similar way, although it's not on a minor river, so Yadua is a little bit better. This is Amber, so this should be a slave estate. This would also work, although it's only forest on a minor river. So let's see. Is this on a river at all? No, it's not. So it could be in Carinia, or we could move it to Yadua. I think, at the end of the day, pop capacity is a big thing here. Major river, minor river, ultimately is better than dry plains when it's forest. So forest and major river counteract each other. So then it's basically the equivalent of a plains with river. Yeah, so let me actually go ahead and move the capital. Well, first let me check everything else. So basically, Yadua is, I think, the best territory, but just to be thorough, this is a slave estate. This one would also technically work. This one would technically work. That would be a farm. This one could also work, although again, yeah, Major River and Minor River is ultimately better in combination, even with forest, than the other options here. And this should be a farm. This should be a lumber camp. Let's move the capital to Yadua, I think. Well, yeah. Eventually, we could also fortify it when we have extra settlement buildings. But I think for now, this would be the best place for it. Pretty sure. I have to move all the pops over, but that's not too hard. It does currently have... Oh, you know what? I didn't think about this. It actually currently has a hunting camp as well. Which I wouldn't care about the hunting camp. I'd get rid of it. But this is lower capacity with the camp in mind. Am I missing something? Why is it so much lower? Let's see. Okay, forest 10%. Adjacent to major river is 10%. Okay. Nearby river is plus 5%. Oh, it's because the camp is worth more than the tribal settlement. Right. So it's 50% reduced if I replace it with the tribal settlement. That's because this is the current capital. That's right. That's right. Right. I think Yadua is ultimately the best spot in terms of just using the territory most efficiently. Let's commit. Let's move. I mean, it's free to move it, but let's do it. Get rid of the tribal settlement here. Move that. Let's move over those tribesmen now. So from Carinia, let's just move over pretty much all of the tribesmen. There we go. And then in Yadua, we will build a settlement when we have the money for it. Okay. Over here in Elysia, let's see. Okay, so this is current farm, future farm, future farm. This could work, Beguntia. It's on a major river. Is it on a minor river? No, it's not. Okay. We do have a minor river in the area, though. Elysia, we got nearby minor river, but not major river. Elysiana is on a minor river currently. Farm, lumber camp, farm and farm. Okay. So the options are basically Elysia, the current place Elysiana, Beguntia would also work. That's kind of it over here. Let's see. Pros and cons. Elysiana, again, just looking at it from a pure pop capacity, and again, ignoring those 6 from it being the current capital, it's forest on a minor river. Elysia is plains on a minor river. So Elysia is technically better than Elysiana from a pure pop capacity point of view. But then we've got Beguntia, which is forest on a major river. So I think if we compare it here, so this is 0 plus 5, whereas this is -10 plus 10. So ultimately, Elysia is the best spot of the 3, with all 3 of them being acceptable spots under my other criteria. Because this isn't on a minor river as well, forest and major river cancel each other out, but this is plains on a minor river. So this is ultimately the spot. It's all frigid climate, of course. But so we're going to move it to Elysia, which is also the name of the province, which is nice when that works out, but not a priority I need to focus on. So let's move the capital to Elysia. Then we'll build a tribal settlement there. We haven't built one over here yet before. Not entirely sure why, but we will eventually. Okay. Over here in Lugia, although I can move the capital, I can't do much more than that because it's still disloyal. Okay, same thinking here. Laudicum is on a major river, no minor river. Okay, no other major rivers around here, but plenty of minor rivers. Vartia would actually probably work. It's minor river, it's plains. It's also a resource I'm fine losing out on. Let's go through and let's see. Places that, okay, this needs to be a mine, so that'll stay. So we got farm, lumber camp, farm. So, okay, so, and then mine there. So let's see, this is also plains on a minor river. right next to Elysia as well. Leucharistus, or Varia. Or Vartia, I should say. So we got wet plains and wet plains. Wet as in there's a river nearby. The rest of this is forest. Okay, yeah. Plains with minor river is better for pop capacity than forest on major river, if forest doesn't also have minor river, which this one does not. Okay, so it comes down to which one would be better. Let's see. I think probably... let's see here. Probably, I mean, I think they're pretty much identical of each other. I think I will probably... I'll think about this for a minute. I think I'll do Vartia. Yeah, I'll do Vartia over here. So Vartia will be the capital of Lugia, and it will have the tribal settlement. Okay. That looks good. It also currently has a barracks, for what that's worth. I can't move people around or do anything over here, but at least it has... I can... Yeah, it doesn't really matter ultimately. I'm going to replace it anyways. But yeah, I think Vartia is the better of the two spots, just because it's not directly next to Elysia. Not that it matters that much, but at this point, that's the last thing I can kind of, like, consider here. Okay, over here in... actually, yeah, let me... yeah, I'll go to Kiz Carpathia next. Okay, so in Kiz Carpathia, Agram was my fort location capital, so I can obviously move that. There's a lot of other good spots around here. Okay, let's see, there's no major rivers, so we're only looking at minor rivers and plains. Pretty much all of these are, with a few exceptions, plains on minor rivers. So let's see, Tandem would work, Cracovia would work, Mitibis would work. Oh no, this is a lumber location. This is a farm location. Matiscua would also work. As would, I think, this one up here, Lecrotiania would also work. This one should be a mine. This is obviously going to stay a mine. Agram should be a lumberyard. Okay, so this should be a slave estate for the gemstones. Okay, which one should it be? Probably Cracovia is my pick, just because of its location. I want to pick something that's sort of central if I am able to pick, but that's ultimately the last priority of the list that I've mentioned. I think I'll go with Cracovia. Let me go ahead and move it there. Alright, and then we'll build a tribal settlement later. Okay, over in Sub-Carpathia, which is almost actually loyal after a very long time of not being loyal. Let's see what we got here. So, mine, lumberyard, lumber. This could work. Current farm, future farm, that could work as well. Future mine, that would also work. Although, plains, okay, sure, plains, hills, and hills. Hills, technically, doesn't have a pop capacity effect, so hills actually is better than forest, though I think plains is better than hills because of the civ level. So, all things considered, the advantage of, and this is a very small advantage, it's just civ level, which is going to be low everywhere. So I could put it in Octavim, which I think is the technically best spot of the three that I consider good spots, or valid spots. I think I prefer Acrium because of its central location in the province, and it's such a small difference ultimately. I think I will go with Acrium. Hold on, wait, is this on the river? It's not, I'm glad I checked that. I think Lenorum is the next best spot, because this is on the river. That's a 5% difference. Although, now that I'm further away, maybe I do just go for Octavim. Yeah, let's see. Yeah, I think so. Let's go for Octavim. Again, the locations are going to feel kind of weird, but we're just looking purely on a min-max within the province level. Okay, over here, Folia is definitely not the right spot. Let's see. You know, let me do this in a bit more of an organized way. in Bessetia, let's sort of do these regions first before I'm kind of going all over the place. So this place is plains on the river, so this would technically work. Okay, what else do we have? Farm, forest, so no. Forest, farm. I mean, it would work, but I have a plains option. Mine. This is all forest. Okay, so I think Ukrainyka would actually be the best spot here. Again, it's right next to Octavim. That has to be okay. I have to fully commit to the min-maxer mindset here, so I think we just keep it at Ukrainyka, to be honest. I think this is technically the best spot in the entire province, in terms of within the province what the spots are. Okay, over here, Vestulia Inferioris. Probably not this, because this is forest. Let's see, what else do we have? Okay, so let me start with my simple terrain map mode. Why are you not on my list? I'm going to replace supply. That's fine. Okay. So let's see. Farm. This could work. This could be a lumber camp. But this is also not on the river. I think I'd rather miss out on a lumber camp and get a plains territory on the river to be the capital, because none of these reach the major river. So I think we move the capital to Materia. Yeah, I think that makes sense. Okay. Okay, over here, let's kind of loop around. Actually, you know, I missed one over here. Amadokia. This one here just became loyal super recently, so I can now defortify it. It was previously stuck fortified because it was disloyal. I think this is all forest, isn't it? Yeah. All right, so now it's just a trade good question. So mine, farm, keep that in mind 100% for sure. Vorta looks kind of promising. Do we have a river? No river. All right, mine. This one on the river? Still no river. Okay, this one works though. Farm. This one's definitely on the river, as are these two. Okay, these should both be farms. So bow store would actually work. And let's see. So the river only reaches directly through these three, so it should be bow store. Yep, process of elimination. Bow store will be the capital. Okay. All right, over here, now we cycle back around to Vestulia. Let's see what we got here. So certainly not Folia. Mine, Donar would work, but do we have anything that's on the river that's a plains? Although forest with minor river and major river is better, so maybe Folia actually isn't a bad option. I kind of think it might be the correct option, actually. Yeah, major river and forest cancel out, and then you got nearby river. So essentially it's the equivalent of plains with river that's not on the major river. So let's see what our options are. So that's a farm. This one isn't on the river. Okay. This one is on the river. Okay, but it's not on the major river, so it's worse. This one would work. Are you on the river? You're not. Okay. Neither are you. Donar is on the river. So Folia is the equivalent of a non-major river, non-forest, that's also on a minor river. So it and Donar are equivalent. The difference then becomes, okay, civ level from forest. Now we're kind of going down to the next tier of considerations here. So, I mean, that's one thing. Extra food from plains as well, and movement cost, so that's not that big of a deal. I think Donar might be a little better because of the civ level, but it's very close. You in the river? No. This should be a slave estate. These are both not on the minor river. So it comes down to Folia versus Donar. Folia could also eventually have a port, but that's such a small consideration. I think let's go for... Let's go for Folia. It's in a slightly more central location. I have to kind of fall back to that, if nothing else. Over here with Venetia Inferior, I think this place has actually just come out of disloyalty recently as well. Do I have any extra infrastructure I can get rid of over here? Not really. Okay, so let's see here. Do I have, hold on. Yeah, okay. In Venetia Inferior, the capital's been Agladia for a really long time, but it really shouldn't be. I think I've got a few territories that are on the major river and the minor river. Let's see. Oh, I guess not, actually. Okay, what about you? Wow, okay. I don't have any that are actually on both rivers, or at least on multiple river systems. Okay, so we are left with, let's see, is this all forest? I think it probably is, right? We got some plains down here. So forest on the major river is the same as plains, not on the river. So if we take a look at this, yeah, it's all forest along the river. So our two plains, I mean, Mentora should remain a logging camp. It could be fill-in. No water, though, but it might be the best option. So, okay, so it comes down to other considerations. Sofa is in a central location. Coroton should be a farm. That should be a farm. This is not on a river, and it's a forest, so it's not a great option. This should be a farm. This is a farm. Venediciana would also technically work, but I think fill-in is better. So fill-in or sofa for Venetia Inferior. I'm kind of thinking sofa, honestly. It's in a more central location. Fill-in and sofa are basically equivalent, I think. So let's put it in sofa. So you can see my new approach here, it's very mathematical. It's very kind of logical, for lack of a better term. I think I've previously kind of had a vibes-based capital location approach. Now I'm really forcing myself to just cut away what I like to see visually, which in this campaign with no cities, it's always going to look a little weird to me, and just focusing on what technically is good in the game's system. Okay, let's head back over here. Did we already settle on Fulla? I think we didn't over here. I think we went south. So in Skyria, let's see. So Duretica is a farm location, so no. Toll is as well. Are you on the river by chance? No, of course not. Any other rivers? Venediciana is coastal, and it is on a minor river. Oh, never mind. It should be a slave estate, or I mean, yeah, a slave estate. This should be a farm. Salts could work, but you're a forest. Okay, now we look. Let's look now at the major river adjacent guys. So this could work. Farm. You know, I think Folia actually is the best spot because it is a resource that I don't need to. Like woad is kind of valuable, 3.35, but that's only a little bit more than livestock. I don't think it's enough to like really change too much. I think Folia probably is the best spot here. It's on the major river. It's plains. It's a resource I'm fine to miss out on. This is kind of a large province, so I have a lot of options, but I think Folia is fine to keep as it is. Okay, moving over here, we now have Crononia. So I've previously put it at Crononia Borealis because this should be a farm, and it should be a farm. This should be a slave estate. Let's see. Let's not forget that coastal is 5% by itself, so we shouldn't overlook that. Let's see here. Yeah, but this should be a slave estate, so we shouldn't worry about that. I think this is probably the best spot for it, honestly. It's fairly central, so that's good. Turintia, I think this is the best spot. I think I've even talked about this at length before. I may also build the settlement here just because I happen to have the money right now. Actually, was I going to build something else that I was going to save? I think it's fine. I'll just build the settlement now. Yeah, this is central. It's on the river. It's the name of the province for what that's worth, and it's a territory I'm fine missing out on, so that's fine. Okay, over here, let's see. Chasinia, this is all forest. What do we got? Okay, Viku at least is the right kind of trade good. Farm, lumber camp, Beerzu would work, lumber camp. Rezuts would work, farm, this would also work too. But let's have it be, I think Viku's best because it's on the river. All other things considered, that's the main difference here. Okay, Transrabonia, I have it at Progmancio. I think this one is pretty much the best spot. I looked at this one at length a few episodes ago. Let's see, okay, we got farm. So this one's not on the river, is it? Nope. Farm, lumber camp. Esveos is marsh, so definitely not. That should be a mine. This isn't on the river. Timofivo would also work. But I think I just ultimately settled on Progmancio because of its location. I think we'll keep it at that. That's fine. Okay, and then Rabonia, I put it at Mamre. I think this is still the best spot, given that this is all forest. Yeah, so that's fine. And then Oceoia, let's see. The thing is, like, a lot of these places I selected a few episodes ago are still the best place, because my thinking hasn't really changed that much. Let's see. I think this is still the best place in this particular province. Yeah. Yep, this is fine. But this needs to have the infrastructure built onto it. Okay. I think that's actually all of Vistulia and Venetia addressed using that thinking. Let's go ahead and now apply this thinking to some of our new regions. Let's actually start over here with... actually, let's start with Bersenthia, I think. So in Bersenthia, let's see. So over here, it's all forest and some marsh as well. So probably just something on the major river is best. So either Brazla or Jelenia would probably be best. Actually, not Brazla, because this is marsh. So Jelenia would be best. So let's go ahead and move the capital there. All right. Over here in Androphagia Orientalis, again, oh, this is plains? Okay, this is apparently plains. Actually, a lot of this is apparently plains. News to me. Okay, so this should be a farm. Sorrow, I think, is probably fine to just keep because it's on the major river. Yeah, that's the best spot. Over here, capital should probably be Minsk. Well, I do have a lumber camp set up here already, which would be a little annoying to have to reorganize, but I certainly can do it. All this stuff is unfortunately, well, not unfortunately, but inconveniently, this is all stuff that has trade goods for me. Are you on the minor river? You actually are, so Sharai would work. How about Smarhan? That should be a farm, actually. So let's see. So forest not on the minor river is worse than plains. Dry plains is better than forest on minor river, so Minsk is technically better. And I think all things considered, because there's no other rivers around here that I can think of. All things considered, I think Minsk might actually be better. Minsk, the plains, as the capital, just because it has a bit more pop capacity. I can move these slaves elsewhere. I believe in myself. Okay, over here, Nuria Septentrionalis. Let's see here. This is probably not the best spot long term. I think this was a fort location pick. All right. This should be a slave estate. It's a lumber camp. Vygonoshkanskoye would be okay. Do we have any non-forests? Not really. Marsh is definitely a no-go. This should be a farm. All this stuff should be farms, or it's marsh. That should be a mine, farm. Yeah, I don't have a lot of options around here. Salahorsk is in a slightly better spot. It's not on the river, but it's not a trade good location either. I think I'll pick... how much is marsh? Yeah, the civ levels and the pop capacity together is too much. I think I either pick Salahorsk or I pick Pahost. Pahost means I miss out on a lumberyard, but it does have slightly better pop capacity potential than Salahorsk because it's on the major river. I think I'll pick Pahost. All right. Oh my gosh, this region is enormous. All right, over here in Nuria Meridionalis, I currently have it at Uz, which was a fort location pick. Pripyat's a mine, so not going to replace that. That's a farm. Hereslia would work. Mine. This would work too. Actually, that's a forest, so maybe not. So, let's see. That's annoying. Are you guys on Minor River by chance? No, you're not. I already have Pripyat built up as a stone mine, but Pripyat could be the capital. Of all the 3 resources, I think stone is the least valuable. Let's see, iron, 0.25. What's stone selling for? 0.25, actually. Okay, I stand corrected. Actually, grain is the least valuable. I could put it at Mazier. No, that's a guaranteed extra copy. I shouldn't really make that compromise. I think Hereslia is probably the best spot. It's less central than Uz, but it's on the major river, so that's extra pop capacity. We got, again, we're looking at the numbers here, right? That's all we care about. All right, over here, Fons Bersenthia. Tetrav's a cool spot, but it doesn't really fit in our rules too much. Okay, Pirhirchi, I think, farmland is so nice. It's so rare in this part of the world, but this should be a farm. I gotta follow my rules. Hidzien should be a farm. Kreisne looks promising. What about this? Kotov would also work. Which one would I prefer to select, I guess is the question. They're kind of equivalent. I don't think it makes a huge difference which one I pick. Let's do Kotov, because it's in a slightly better spot, I think. Okay. Alright, and then let's do the center here. So, alright, this was a fort location, but this also might be a good location anyways. Yeah, this is Minor River, Major River. It is forest, but so is everything else. Yeah, this is the spot. I'll just keep it there. Okay. Bersenthia Ultima, let's see. It's all forest, so this is probably not the best spot. Lumber camp, farm. Ooh, okay, Nauis looks kind of promising. The lumber camp that I currently have. This could be a farm as well. Let's put it at Nauis, I think. Yeah. Now, hold on, wait. Before I do that, any minor rivers? No, not really. In fact, not just not really, not at all. Okay. Over here, Melanchthania Occidentalis. This was a fort location that I picked. Ooh, okay, plains on the major river. Game changing. Horses can go, that's fine. Oh yeah, so Sudist is the pick. Not even gonna second guess that one. Easy pick for that one. Right over here, Bedinia Superioris. I already looked at that one. Okay, Bedinia itself, I think this is all... Oh, hold on, we got some hidden plains. Yes, the plains of Bedinia. Can't you see them? They're in there somewhere. All right, are you on the minor river? No. Are there any rivers at all anywhere around here? Oh, hello. I'm spotting a river. Brasivka should be on the river. It is. All right. You've just won yourself the capital location. This would also have worked, but it's not on the river. Neither is this, so that's fine. Over here, we've got Gelon is allegedly a farmland. Can you see farmland in there? I can't, but that's supposedly what it is. Ooh, cloth on the farmland. That is probably going to be my winner, because farmland's 10% by itself. That being said, this is forest, and as is all this. Okay, yeah, Gelon wins. If this was actually plains, which I thought it was at first, it actually looks a bit like marsh, but it's forest, of course, so let's make Gelon the capital of Galonia. I guess that's convenient. Easy to remember. Okay, and then, let's see. Then we got the remnants of the old northern part of the Scythian wall. All right, we got a few rivers around here. Let's see. Kursk should be a farm. Oskil looks promising. Orlik would also, not as, well, hold on, wait. Ooh, you know what? I'm glad I double-checked that. Steppe. I forgot about steppe terrain. Steppe terrain is going to be rough, because steppe terrain is truly miserable to work with for pop capacity. So Sarmatia is going to be pretty rough. It's going to be really, really low. So definitely not O-skill. Let's see. Yeah, O-skill is like a huge... It's like, what, even compared to like mountain. Like, what's mountain again? Hold on, let me find a mountain. It's like over twice as bad as mountain, which I think is a little... I don't know if I agree with that. I think people can live in the steppe easier than they can live in mountains, but okay, sure, if you say so, game. Where was I? Got lost in my massive country. It was over here. Okay, so let's see. So Kursk is on the river in its plains, but it's a farm location. This farm location, Orlik, would work. Belaya is a... the rest of this is not on the river. Let's go with Orlik. I think this is the best spot because it's woad. Let's move the capital there. Okay. And then up here... So probably on one of the major rivers is the best spot. So actually Ronka might be kind of good. Any minor rivers? Nope. So Sausis and Ronka are both actually kind of good looking. And they're kind of the equivalent of each other. I don't really know if either one is better than the other necessarily. It's currently at Sausis. Would I like it to be at Ronka? Not really. I think Sausis is fine. Have I missed something? Oh, I have not. Okay. So I think that's Bersenthia fully updated. Pretty sure I moved all the capitals now in Bersenthia. Okay, and I think I'm actually going to call this episode here. I don't want to... I've got a bit more work to do. I don't think I can fit in Scythia and Western Sarmatia into this episode. But we actually are making really good progress. Weirdly, my new approach to capital locations is so like thoroughly thought through, it's actually leading me to not really spend a lot of time hemming and hawing about each individual choice, because I have such a clear vision for what my criteria are, which is what I should have had the whole time, honestly. This is very much a like learning from, experience, learning from mistakes about what works and what doesn't work, about what to prioritize with the capital locations. But I feel really good about my approach now, and I think that although it's going to be a little weird to see the capitals in the locations, because a lot of them don't, on the face of it, seem like good locations, I need to have confidence in myself that I have, as this episode shows, meticulously thought about every single province, thinking about where should the capital be in an opportunity cost sense. This is a long-term min-max approach to how to organize territory like this. So, with that said, that's going to be it for this episode of the Sporia Campaign. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you all next time.